Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on our Facebook Live. This is Love, Sex After the Rose. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No Rose Ceremony. My name is Evinda Leppens. I'm super excited that you're here tonight. As you come in, would you just press your share button, because we're going to have some really great conversation going. With me tonight is my really good friend, Shelly, and I've known her for quite some time. She's got a lot to offer. She's become not just a great friend, but she's also a graduate of our upcoming class, which is called How to Love Who You Love. And in addition to that, she is going to be one of our facilitators for that class. So I just want to introduce her and have her tell you a little bit about herself and the class.
So I went into this class not because I was in a bad place in my marriage, actually. I was doing really good, but I just wanted to kind of learn some things. And the awesome thing about this class was that it didn't concentrate on how to fix him or how to fix somebody else, right?
Or the kid, or
yeah, it was just all about ways that I could better myself. So I learned a lot of things about myself, about my childhood, about just my behaviors, why I did certain things. And it was just an awesome class. And it learning about yourself and improving your behaviors is only going to help you have a stronger marriage, have stronger relationships with your children and your friends and your family. So
it's so true. It's so funny because a lot of people oftentimes they like, oh, I need that class on, he needs it or she needs it. And it's always about the other person. And so watching relationships transform as they come into the class and learn about themselves and think, oh, maybe I am part of the problem has been life-changing for me. I know I've really enjoyed watching that. So anyways, how did we get on the subject of sex anyways? Okay, so I know that you and I, Shelly, have talked about this quite some time ago. Well, actually, it's just been a couple of months ago. But after we talked about it, it's kind of funny how that works. I had an incredible experience on the record. And for those of you joining, I'm a court reporter. And so one day on the record, we were doing this case, and it was of a plaintiff's husband. And so she was suing Knott's Berry Farm. So I can say it because it's public record. So welcome, you guys. Just press that share button and keep on joining us. But anyway, so she was suing Knott's Berry Farm, but we were deposing the husband. And so at the end of towards the end of the depo, I found out there was a loss of consortium, which is a loss of sex, due to her fall at Knott's Berry Farm. So she was trying to blame Knott's Berry Farm for not being able to participate with intimacy with her husband. And so it's kind of funny because, culturally, and I'm just going to say this right now, there's a lot of people that didn't respond so much to the invitation to this segment tonight. And I think it's because culturally speaking, we just have this stigma, like it's not okay to talk about sex, like it's just filthy and it's shameful. And so I know as people come in, they may not want to tell us that they're here because, sex is not easy to talk about, but it's kind of the way it was in this depo. So the attorney kind of saved the questions for last, and he looks at the guy and he says, so you're claiming that there is, a lack of consortium, and the guy goes, huh? What's that? And so the attorney said, well, you're a lack of sex. You're not able to have sex with your wife. And so he just kind of was blunt and, oh. And so the attorney says, so, how long has it been? And when, what's the problem? And the guy says, well, every time, I want sex, she just is in a bad mood and she doesn't feel good and everything hurts. And so I look over at the attorney and, trust me, you guys, this is really hard to keep a straight face while we're on the record and we're talking about this. I'm just kind of dying, it's like take responsibility for your actions, right? Or inaction. So the attorney said something that really kind of pierced my heart, because I know that my relationship can be in this same stagnant place. And that is, he said, it just got really quiet. Like you could have heard a pin drop. And he just looked at the guy and he goes, and he's chuckling. Well, isn't that all marriage? And that really pierced my heart. And then it kind of reminded, we had talked about this, and just how frustrated you are that, for women, it's just become so culturally acceptable to not, participate in intimacy. And I don't want to say just the women, because, men are guilty too. It's just, I think the percentage kind of weighs kind of like this, where it's a lot of women don't and the men really want it, but there are some men that don't and the women really want it. So it's...
And I've had conversations with both. I've had conversations with men and women, and both of them have expressed frustrations with getting married and how excited they were.
Yeah.
And then their sex life just not being what they were hoping that it was going to be, and the frequency or whatever you want to call it was just not there. And so no, we're not going to man bash here.
No,
we're not.
No, not at all.
But you could also, on the flip side of that, say that there's plenty of commercials and television shows and things like that where it's making fun of women having headaches, of women not being in the mood. I mean, we all kind of accept that that's just part of society, is that men have this view of women, right?
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking. It's like I know, to be honest with you, if you were to get my husband off to the side, he would probably agree with that attorney. And that's heartbreaking. It's like that really opened up my eyes, because I don't want to be put in that category, because miserable and marriage should not coexist. So, I think what we need to do is start with a question. What is sex to an unmarried man? And take that away. What do you...
Well, so we've done a little bit of a poll and asked a few men, what is sex to the unmarried man? Yes. And keep in mind, we are not talking making love, intimacy, all those wonderful things, right? Right now, we're just talking about just raw sex. What is raw sex to an unmarried man? And what we found is that it's this hunger, it's this craving. This is what the guys are telling us, that it's just this thirst that must be quenched. My husband likes to call it the static monster.
Okay.
So he said that, when he was younger, if this static monster, the longer that he basically went unsatisfied, the larger the monster grew, right?
And no pun intended.
Yeah. So there's that part of it. And then there's this other part of it that's kind of like this, I'm a man and I'm going to conquer the land. This is my land. I want it. I want to take it. Right. So you've got these two things going on, but at the heart of it all, I think the bigger issue for women is that even though the man wants to satisfy the woman,
yes,
it's still him satisfying. It's still his need to feel like he's great in bed. It's all about him, right?
So it's an ego thing.
So it's very much ego and self, right? It's a very me thing.
Right.
So when that happens, I think sometimes the women just maybe feel a little bit left out, or maybe just the focus shifts a little bit, right?
Well, and let me just say, stop you there for a second. So the whole ego thing, you know what? We need to accept that, because that's kind of how men are created, and it's not, because, Carl has said something to me before that's really helping me understand something. And, the whole thing about men is they look at women as not a possession. So don't misquote me, or don't say I'm not going there, but kind of like their land.
Right.
And so when their land walks by, I want to touch my land. And so that's really helped me give George permission to just touch his land and not get so pissed off and be so uptight about it, And
that's okay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I still think that there is a disconnect, and maybe the next question that we need to ask is, what is sex to the unmarried woman? I mean, we've talked about the man, right? And the conquests and the hunger and all of that.
Yes.
So what does sex look like to an unmarried woman?
So to me, it's I don't believe that it's like an ego thing. I think that we need to stay here for a second, because I think for women, many of us have read the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. There's all kinds of books out there that really try to teach us the difference between men and women. And, men, a lot of men, I won't say all men, and again, we're not bashing, but men aren't as emotional as women.
Right.
So I think what is sex to an unmarried woman, to a degree, I think it helps her to feel wanted. It helps her to feel accepted. And there is the very unhealthy balance there where, especially women who have had childhood issues, as it comes to sex being done inappropriately, they will go completely over on the other spectrum. And so sex becomes a way to get their way. Sex becomes a way to become accepted, to feel valued, because of the way it was misappropriated as a child. So I don't necessarily believe it's ego for women, but at the same token, it helps.
I mean, I think you're right. I think there's a percentage of women that that need to be validated, and they need to be loved and wanted, and they get that through sex.
Yes.
And you're right. It can be a very unhealthy thing.
Yes.
But I think for the majority of women, it is a very emotional act. It is a very, they need that connection. It's not just that raw.
Exactly.
Not saying that we don't get a little hungry ourselves.
Right.
But I think it goes beyond that. And I think that's where the Venus-Mars thing comes in, is that guys are very black and white with their hunger.
Yeah. It's very simple.
But
we complicate it.
Well, we kind of do. We've got a little bit more going on.
Yeah, because we need the intimacy, and intimacy can be a variety of things. Like, you tell me what you, in your opinion, what do you think intimacy is for us as women? And then I want to kind of share something on that also.
Are you talking about sexual intimacy, or are you talking about just intimacy in general? Because I think that can be very different. I think to a lot of men, they view intimacy as only being in the bedroom.
See, and that's true. That is totally true, because, and I have this same disagreement with my guy, which, this is a very valid thing to talk about having the same type of argument over and over and over again. This class really addresses that cycle as we talked about. But I think that for women, intimacy is about connection. And I don't necessarily believe that it's physical connection. And I'll share with you something that happened just a couple of days ago. We had taken a little Brighton to Knott's Berry Farm, and we were chatting and sitting down having a little bite to eat. And I don't even remember what we were talking about, but all of a sudden I caught his eyes. I looked right into his eyes, and I just said 3 simple words. And I tear up every time I think about it. I just said, I need you. And he was just like taken aback. And in that moment, not only was it very intimate for me, and I felt like, man, too bad we had Brighton, because we could go find a bathroom and be fun, and he has a hard time believing it. I love spontaneity in that area. But anyways, but it also told me that I'm not doing a good job of letting him know that I need him. And I believe as we, explore this a little bit more, men need to feel valued and needed. And
absolutely.
And I really believe that's very important to a man. And so when I saw George respond the way that he did, I was convicted right away, knowing, man, I have not been doing a good job of letting this man know that I need him. Because let's face it, women, especially if we're not in a good place and we're not in a good place in our marriage, or we're just feeling disconnected, we can act a little independent, No,
and I think that they absolutely, going back even to what we said about them being good in bed, for instance, they need to feel wanted and needed in and out of the bedroom. They need to feel that, even just in those touches, and maybe that's where we go back to the intimacy again. I think men and women both need that touch throughout the day. They need that glance.
Yes.
And as vulnerable as that was for you to open yourself up like that,
it was
right?
risky.
That was an intimate moment.
Yes, it was.
And I think that it's those moments throughout the day that help set the stage for us to want that sexual intimacy at the end of the day. And I think sometimes that Venus and Mars thing comes to play, because I think for so many people, they're on the go, you're on the go, just nonstop.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough times throughout the day where you're making that connection. And I think it's really important that people communicate with each other, and that people understand what that intimacy is, that it's not just about the bedroom.
No,
it's about those glances. And it can even go beyond that. I mean, sometimes it's just the little acts of kindness. It's, getting a cup of coffee in the morning.
We're going to go into that. We actually, Shelly and I came up with the term emotional foreplay. We're going to actually talk about that in a little bit. But let's talk about dating and intimacy. What does intimacy look like again? And again, we've talked with men, and the consensus is that intimacy for most men begins with feeling wanted and valued. So it's not just a coincidence either. I think that that is something that we as women need to learn to accept. And what the value and need ends with is typically it ends with sex for them. So,
or they want it to end with sex,
yes,
right? So example, how many women out there, yourself included, have ever had your husband ask you for a massage, knowing that there's maybe certain parts of your body that he's wanting to massage, right? I mean, there's definitely an ulterior motive there. Not all of the time, but but most I think time. Pretty often there is a bonus plan that they are looking for, as my husband would like to say it, at the end of that massage, right?
Okay, and I have to tell myself here, because here's the deal. So why is it not okay what if that is their motive, And you guys, as you're in here, you're in here tonight with us, go ahead and press the share button, because we really want to spread the word of hope and help in a subject that is just kind of awkward to talk about. But I want to get to this massage for a minute, because I know I am so guilty of that. George is such a wonderful guy, and oftentimes he will say, can I give you a foot massage? We like to sit on the couch and rub each other's feet.
Right.
When we're doing it for each other, I'm good. But whenever he says, you want a massage? My very first thing is, why? What do you want? You want to get in my pants? And it's like, why do I have to do that? Why do I have to be like that? So what? So it's kind of like a give and take thing. What if he does want to get in my pants? He's married to me, for crying out loud. He should want to get in my pants. So why do I have to condemn him for wanting to start with a massage? Because he knows I actually need to be worked up a little bit, because I'm old. You don't get just turn the key on and it goes. I need to be kind of vamped up a little bit. So yeah, I think that we block intimacy when we focus on their motive, which I don't think it's the whole motive, but it's part of the motive. But so what? I think the sooner I learn to accept that, the more free I could be to enjoy the friggin' massage. And then if it goes somewhere afterwards, I might even enjoy it.
So do you think perhaps that you're struggling?
I'm saying hi here.
Do you think you're struggling because maybe you need that mood to be set? Maybe that emotional foreplay is something that you're not communicating well with each other.
Yes.
And so,
so
let's go back to that for a little bit. What is that emotional foreplay to you?
Okay. So to me, and we've talked about this, the emotional foreplay, it's making sure that we're connected throughout the day, because let's be honest, women, how many of you are really, really busy? We're busy. And I know that after my quiet time, I hit the ground running. And the last thing I'm thinking about is sex. I'm sorry. It's just not. And so by the time I get home and, take the shoes off, do dinner, whatever, the last thing I'm thinking about is sex, because I'm usually pretty tired. And he already knows, don't you dare try to do it when we get upstairs and my head's on that pillow, because it ain't happening. So we got to get creative with it. So for me, I think I need to work at it, but I need him to work with me in setting the stage, if you will. The emotional foreplay to me is staying connected throughout the day, sending, cute little sexy text messages or something, thinking of you. And, I've done that a couple of times. And I don't want to say it excites me erotically, but it starts to set the stage for me. And I start to feel that connection with him. And I want more.
Right. And it doesn't mean, we're not talking some 24/7 little texting throughout the day, right? We've got jobs, we've got lives,
right.
But it's just the little things, It's like I said, the cup of coffee in the morning, or how do you, how you greet each other in the morning when you wake up. Do you just run for the coffee pot and you're out the door?
Yeah.
Or do you take even just a moment or a glance and just acknowledge each other? What are you doing? Because we know what the guy wants, right?
Yeah.
We know what he wants. And the massage is not a bad thing, right?
Right.
It feels good, right? Like we like the massage.
Yes.
So there's obviously a disconnection, and that's where I think it's really important to communicate with each other, because I think that so much is going on throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we need to really start asking ourselves some questions about what happens at the end of the day, maybe even,
right. Exactly. So how do we set the stage during the day to reach the end of the day? But there's a comment in here that I want to address. He says, A back rub is just a back rub. Oh yeah, sure. Okay. But also us old school men call it romance. And I'm going to say something here, and I'm not bashing The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. Well, maybe I am kind of, sort of, because, shows like that get us to believe in the happily ever after without the friggin' work, without the massage, you know what I'm saying? So, as we said before in our little, infomercial reminding you all to join us, who freaking wouldn't fall in love on a date where you're in some foreign country on a cliff with a helicopter ride with a big old table of beautiful roses, champagne. I mean, who wouldn't fall in love?
You got the fantasy date, you got the fantasy suite, right? So it's like everything is perfect.
Yeah.
But I think not perfect. In that environment, that's great. And I agree. I think a back rub, a massage can be a very romantic gesture.
Yes.
And I think that it's something, I'm not criticizing the massage. I'm criticizing almost the women who are, I'm trying to figure out where the disconnect is. Why do the women think that it's bad? I think the men are coming at it from a good place.
Yes.
But I'm also...
And we tend to kind of complicate it. I really do. And I'm taking ownership of that. But I wanted to say that romance, in my opinion, should be saved for marriage, because that's when we need it the most. I mean, dating is just a freaking stage to act your best, So, the massage itself, it's great. And it's just a new way of looking at it. And so it's really helped me,
Well, and what I want to try to figure out is not necessarily the massage, but where is the disconnection between the men and women?
Yeah.
And what can we do to fix it? I think that setting the stage for a lot of women, I think you're right. I think women do tend to complicate things.
Yeah, because I don't think that when you say emotional foreplay, I think we know what it is, but do we know how to communicate it to our guys what emotional foreplay is? What does it look like? So,
well, like I said, I think it's the touches and the glances and it's the things throughout the day. But I think for a lot of other people, it's what happens at the end of the day. Let's ask ourselves some questions here. What happens, and I know there's a lot of dual income households like mine.
Right.
So I'm not going to say when the husband comes home from work, because we all know that there's plenty of women out there that are coming home from work too.
That's right.
I know in my own household, sometimes I'm home. My husband and I work from home, but a lot of times he's gone at an appointment, I'm gone at an appointment. But the bottom line is when you get home, what do? I mean, when you're walking through the door, are you stopping again, just like in the morning? Are you stopping to hug and kiss your spouse and acknowledge them? Or is it just a hey from across the room and then you're going back to what you're doing? What's going on? I mean, same thing with making dinner. Who's making dinner? Who's cleaning up? I know with my husband and I, depending on our work schedules and everything, there's a lot of times we're in the kitchen together. We're cooking, we're talking, we're recapping on our day,
right.
Talking about things. That's a great time for us together in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's something that we enjoy doing.
So you share the load, but let me ask you, how did you get to share the load without it being a chore? Because that's another thing I need to work on, is like if I've been working all day and I come home and there's been no dinner made, my old self would be very, very upset. But now it's like, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? Let's do dinner together, because I can just see that when George and I are in the kitchen together, cooking whatever it is, it's a great time to just catch up and, hey, what's going on? What happened with your day today? And we're both sharing the load. So to me, that also is emotional foreplay.
Well, yeah, because a lot of women appreciate that. I think that goes a long way. And so like for me, I think that we need to remind ourselves, God wants us to be one. He wants us to be in partnership with each other. And so like with Darren and I, there's a lot of times where maybe I'm making dinner or he's making dinner. I mean, we're not in there together every night. But then the other person, runs in and tries to fill in the gap and just do whatever they can to help. And I think it's just that attitude and that motivation that we have to want to be in partnership with each other and wanting to help each other. But I think with a lot of people, they get going on their day. They get so focused on their work or their chores or their duties or the kids or the dogs or the cats or whatever the case may be,
Let me address a couple comments here. It says, I go to work before she wakes up, and every now and then I will go outside, pick a flower, and put it on her purse. To me, that is emotional foreplay.
That is really good. That's very romantic. That's very sweet. And I think your wife should appreciate that, because you are letting her know
that you're thinking about her.
Yeah,
and you value her, and you're doing something that hopefully will, just make her smile. And then we have another comment. My boyfriend cooks for me all the time and does the dishes. Well, I think that's a keeper. Here's the deal. I think that we fall for the Cinderella thing, and the whole Prince Charming thing. And what happens when the Prince Charming falls off his horse and Cinderella flies on her broom? Life happens. And we really need to, I think, really emphasize and talk about this whole, emotional foreplay. I think that truly is the disconnect. I know I've had to work on how I greet George when I come home, because, some of you have heard this before. A couple years ago, I don't know, maybe it's been a few years ago, we have 4-legged children, and we always got come in through the garage, and I came in through the garage, and dogs are always so happy to see you no matter what. And so I bent down on the ground and was loving on my doggies, and they were kissing my face, and all of a sudden I look, and there's George on the ground acting like a dog because he wanted my attention. That spoke volumes to me. And so since then, I really have tried to give him more than a cursory, hey, seriously, but isn't that what we do? I know we've been guilty of that before, but I think we get in such a rut. We get in such a rut doing our own thing, and we're not conscious of the other person in a sense.
Well, and I think the other thing to remember too is we're in a partnership together.
Yeah.
God wants us to be one, but this isn't a business partnership. This is
right.
not, but I think that's the way we treat it sometimes, and we don't treat it the way we should. And I think a lot of couples have devalued intimacy, and I don't understand it. I think a lot of people don't recognize the impact that it can have on a marriage, with or without the intimacy,
yes.
and how destructive it can be if you remove intimacy from a relationship. And I think you just get going, and you're in this almost corporate mentality where you're treating it, okay, well, you're doing this and I'm doing that, and you can go nonstop 24/7. But if you never make that stop to spend that time together, we hear all the time, oh, spice up your sex life and everything else, but they don't really tell you. It's not, I think they still focus on the bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. Because I really believe that for things to be spicy on inside the bedroom, they got to be spicy outside the bedroom.
I think a lot of that starts by communication. And I think that we have to remember that we have to communicate that stuff. So if we can kind of agree that the women might be a little bit more high maintenance in the sex category as far as our emotional needs, then maybe we need to look beyond that, and we need to tell them, okay, sex is a hard thing to talk about, right?
It is. It's obviously.
And if there's something lacking, or if there's a disconnect for us, and we need we need them to set the stage a little bit more, be a little bit romantic.
Yeah.
We need to stop treating our husbands like we're going to the dentist. I hate the dentist. So you go to the dentist, right?
Sorry if anybody's a dentist. I hate you.
Sorry,
I just hate
Collins.
going. Yeah, right. Love you, Pastor Collins.
So you go to the dentist because you got a toothache, right? And you're going to go to the dentist because you think they're going to fix your toothache, right? They know what the problem is. You're going to go to the dentist and they're going to fix it. And I think sometimes we treat our husbands like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they know what the problem is. Why aren't they fixing it? And then we get mad at them when they don't fix it.
Yeah.
So we need to start speaking up, and we need to start telling them what the problem is.
And not assume that they understand, because I know a lot of us, we think to ourselves, let's use this stupid example. Okay, chonies on the floor. Why would they leave their chonies on the floor? We don't want them on the floor. Well, just explain your need. Can you please pick up your underwear? I really don't feel like picking them up. It's the same thing with intimacy. I kind of need you to be a little bit more, compassionate with me, or I need you to, maybe stay connected to me throughout the day. Just send me something. Let me know you're thinking about me, because it really will help me feel connected, feel more intimate, and want to become more intimate with you. I think that we could stay on this subject forever. We only have like 2 minutes left.
And again, I don't want this to feel like a wife bashing session,
or
because
husband
there
bashing.
are plenty of guys that need to communicate their needs and wants to their wives too, because I think it goes beyond that. We know about the hunger and the craving and all of that, but there's an emotional side. I've talked to a lot of guys that just want a little bit more time from their wives. They want the touching and the connections. So, I mean, there's just a lot of,
it goes both ways. And I just know my weaknesses, so I'm focusing on that. But that brings us, we're going to kind of wrap this up. We didn't get to cover everything, but hey, we're going to be back live on the 24th. So feel free to join us then. But I want Shelly to talk a little bit more for a minute about the class, because what we're going to be talking about beginning February 1st in How to Love Who You Love, we get to the nitty gritty of this kind of stuff. And I really feel like, don't you feel like the better you know yourself, the better, because things become a cycle.
Well, right. And like I said at the beginning, so I took these classes not because I was in a horrible place in my marriage.
Right.
I just wanted to take them to better myself. And what I recognized was, so when Darren and I would fight, because of course we fight sometimes, right?
Right.
Every normal marriage, every healthy
marriage. If you tell me you don't fight, to
right?
me, that means your emotional dashboard's in the off position.
So we would fight, but it was always the same thing. Like there was always this cycle. We would go in circles,
right?
Almost chasing each other,
see it.
Right? And we knew it, but we couldn't really. Well, I think we thought we understood it, but then once we took the class, we recognized that we had totally been misinterpreting what the other person was trying to do, and so yeah, we still argue, and sometimes we still go through that circle, but that circle is a lot smaller.
Yes.
Because we recognize, basically what our triggers are, what our behaviors are.
Yeah.
And I think just recognizing that, again, I'm recognizing that about myself, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not about pointing fingers. It's just you understanding each other better so that you can communicate with each other.
Well, and then didn't it help you with your kids? Didn't you?
Absolutely. So, just understanding my kids too, going through the class, I loved how it kind of breaks apart those behaviors and who you are. Mm-hmm. And I can look at my kids and I can understand now why they're behaving that way.
Yeah.
And what, it's not the tell all. It's not like I've got everything figured out now.
Yeah.
But yet I know it's helping. It's helping in my relationships, in my friendships, in my marriage.
Nice.
It's just I just can't tell you enough how awesome this class is.
So we got a comment. I've been married for 30 years. Can't wait for this class. Never too late to make it better. And you can never know your spouse or any of the people that you love, including your kids. So we're going to go ahead and sign off for now. But what I want to do is put up in the comments very quickly the link. Plan on joining us again on January 24th, same time, same channel, Trench Classes United with Evinda Leppins. We're going to pick up on this emotional foreplay and go into a couple of other things that we're going to actually dive into in the class, just to give you a little teaser. And I'll put the link up so you know where you can go to register for the class. You can register as just a single person, or you can bring a friend and get the pair discount. So in between now and then, want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'll put the link up. God bless. Make it a great week and hope to see you in the trenches.
Bye-bye.
And by all means, share the videos. We got hearts and everything coming. I'm still trying to type this in. So it's how to love who you love .eventbrite.com. Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining us. God bless.
Bye-bye.